There's been a lot of conversation lately about women leaving good men or women walking away from a man that's a quote unquote good man. And I think a part of the problem is that a lot of men define themselves as good men and they actually aren't. These self proclaimed good men think that they are because they don't cheat on women or beat on women. But it takes more to being a good man than not doing those things. And just because a man is a quote unquote good man doesn't mean he's the good man for you. Some of these quote unquote good men don't respect women. They weaponize their incompetence. They don't take care of their children. They're disrespectful. They consume manosphere red pill content all day and they think that women are beneath them. I feel like the men who are acting as if women are being too picky or we're looking for the perfect man if we don't want the quote unquote good guy, it's the same energy as saying for them to settle. It's like the saying goes, give a man 10 women and he'll keep looking. Give a woman 10 men and she'll choose. They want you to choose out of this small batch of men and say, hey, out of these 10 guys, which one do you want? Yeah, but there's more than 10 guys out there. And even if he's the nicest out of the 10, doesn't mean that he's what I want. These men want single women to say close enough, he's good enough, he'll do, but that's not what men say. They take their time. They're in no rush to find what they want, but they want to rush you along. They want to make you feel like you're up against the clock. You're running out of time. Your childbearing years are over. That's why they try to tell you that after 25, you're no good and all that. They have a vested interest in trying to hurry you up and picking one of them because they know if you actually took your time, they wouldn't even get picked.
Your life over again, what would you do different?
Not get married.
What's the best advice you can give to the younger generation?
Don't get married.
Do women get divorced because they're bored? They get divorced because they are mistreated, abused, or just plain unhappy and unfulfilled in their marriages. Many women stay married much longer than they should because they are worried about the financial impact of the divorce. This is even scarier for women who have left their careers to raise children, have no income source, and will need time to reestablish themselves. So although some men will hate to hear this, your wife isn't just divorcing you because she's bored. She was probably even hesitant to get divorced because of her financial concerns, but that's just how over this marriage she is.
3 reasons why women initiate divorce more often than men. Number 1, women are more likely to feel held back by the marriage. In many marriages, women are still seen as primarily responsible for domestic duties. So if a woman has high expectations and responsibilities from her career and high expectations and responsibilities at home and does not have support from her husband on her career, she may not find the marriage to be in her best interest anymore. Number 2, women often take on more of the emotional burden. As you know, communication is key to any marriage, and men are not taught how they can communicate and process their emotions. As a result, women in marriages find they often will take on the emotional support system for the entire family. Without emotional support from their husbands, wives are often feeling alone and without a source of support within the marriage. Number 3, women no longer tolerate consistent, unacceptable behavior. Women are no longer willing to put up with consistent, unacceptable behavior from their husbands like they were before. You see, once the honeymoon period is over, some men drastically change their behavior from romantic to controlling and emotionally dismissive or even abusive. Unfortunately, this happens in many, many marriages, and women will not take that anymore. Follow me for additional advice.
5 reasons people get divorced that have nothing to do with cheating or just giving up too soon. 1, one person in the relationship imposes their will onto the other, sometimes physically, but more often this is through emotional abuse, and it's done in a way that erodes the other person's independence and emotional health. 2, the feeling of being constantly overburdened, having to do the majority of the work in both the relationship and within maintaining the household for years. 3, a lack of commitment. Nobody's actually stepping out and having an affair, but one person is clearly and consistently not showing up in their emotional commitment to their partner. Number 4 is addiction. Whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, or even video games, one person is addicted and they refuse to get help. And 5, they can't communicate or relate to one another. But it's not because of their communication skills, which is what we usually think. It's because they don't actually share similar core values, which prevents them from seeing eye to eye. Now, from our clinical experience, sometimes it's just one of these things, but more often than not, it's usually far more.
Did you know that usually it's women that initiate divorce? Want to know why? A lot of men complain that their wife does not put out in the bedroom. The reason why the women are getting divorced is because when they do put out, they still don't get what they need. And then they become resentful. When they married you, they wanted more than a sexual partner. They wanted a friend, a companion, a romantic partner, and someone who would help fulfill family obligations with them. So if they're putting out in the bedroom and you're not putting out in the rest of their life, they will resent you. And eventually, they're going to want to get away from you. And the reason why they're naggy or not fun is because they're tired and frustrated. Because it feels like no matter what they do, you won't do your part. Be a friend, be a romantic partner, fulfill family obligations, watch your marriage change.
One of the most painful but liberating things that I have had to learn and accept over the last year, now that I'm going to be going through this divorce with my husband, is the fact that he doesn't like me. Like, he doesn't like me as a person at all. And I don't even know if he ever really liked me. I do believe that he loved me. I do believe that very much so. And I feel like even now, you know, we've been together for 20 years, married for 17 years. Like, even now, I think that he still has like a love for me and a care, sort of. But he does not like me at all. And that has been so hard to accept, and because the concept of it was just unbelievable to me. How could you marry me? How could you vow to spend the rest of your life with me? How could we have these amazing kids together and we've constructed this entire life as partners together, and you don't even like me as a person? Obviously, there were signs the entire time that he didn't like me. And of course, I spent a lot of time and a lot of mental and emotional energy just rationalizing, making excuses for why he was treating me the way that he was treating me. But the idea that was because he didn't like me was just completely inconceivable to me. Just over this last year, particularly doing a lot more reading, listening to other women's stories, and a lot more having a bigger understanding of like marriage and relationships has really gotten me in this place to finally accept what was the truth that was sitting in front of me this entire time. It's been super, super painful, a painful process, and I'm still going through it. You know, my husband and I are still living together because of finances. But we are going to be splitting up probably within the next 6 months. And it's really hard. But it does remind me that I'm doing the right thing. It does tell me, the fact that I'm even acknowledging that truth and accepting it is saying, I'm making real progress to healing, progress to like loving and liking myself. This is a good sign that I'm on the right track and that I'm doing the right thing for me.
Here are a few reasons why a lot of women decide to get a divorce instead of staying in a situation, in a marriage where you are literally the only one making the relationship work. If you find yourself in a space in a marriage where you are the only one who seems to want the marriage to work, it might be time to consider making your plans to safely exit. Like this woman in this clip here who's still living with the soon-to-be ex-husband. A lot of women has become missing or unalived because of being in situations like that. You have to take safe and necessary steps to set boundaries emotionally and physically in order for you to safeguard yourself, and if you have children, to safeguard them as well. Because you don't know what will trigger a man. Men are very impulsive. Men don't have the depth of emotional capacity that a lot of women have. That's why majority of unaliving cases, the perpetrators are men. This is why I really, really stress the importance of us raising our sons in these generations differently, teaching them skills, taking them to therapy as soon as possible. If you see any signs or you're going through a separation, a divorce, or the home is a bit chaotic, or if they're, substance use, there's a person, a partner, one person or both who struggle with mental health, bipolar personality disorder, chronic depression, chronic illnesses, substance use disorders, things like that, instabilities, really, really huge instability in finances. There's disalignment in how agreements are made. There is lack of conflict resolution. There's constant instability, chaos. Kids absorb it and dysregulates their nervous system, and the way kids learn to not express, because they have no language to express their deep emotions like we do. Even some of us grown-ups don't know that. So it's so important that when you're in that space of should I go, should I stay, and you're choosing to stay, then stay and zip it until such a time where you're completely physically separated, because there's so many women missing and unalived because they choose to not safeguard themselves with a partner when they clearly, when you see it, and you want it differently or wish it differently, because you just don't know what's in somebody's head. You don't know what they're planning. You don't know who they're talking to. You don't know what's in their heads. A few other reasons why, women will choose, because you have this third person. If you have kids, right, you have a third or fourth person who is that partner of yours, who that male partner, who is not making the relationship easy to navigate, the marriage easy to navigate. The kids are walking on eggshells. They are scared of him. He's disengaged. He's inconsistent. He literally unwilling to support fully financially. They leave all the mental and physical labor of doing the home on the woman. So if you have that person there, if you're separate, at least that's one person off your plate. You can just focus on the children. And sometimes we don't want that. A lot of women, we want our marriages. But we are so forced in order to safeguard ourselves, our nervous system, and safeguard the children and their nervous system so they can focus on thriving, so focus on getting good grades. You know how many children are diagnosed with ADHD? Because the chronic instability in the home causing them so much anxiety, panic, dysregulation, that many of these children, especially boy children, show up at school being disrupted, throwing things, not being attentive, moving around, talking too much, because they don't have that stable nervous system in the home. Nobody's hearing them. Nobody's seeing that. If the woman is caught up in this chaos of the marriage, constantly ahead, crying, screaming, demanding, nagging, at what time does she have to even focus on the children to give them the heart place need that these children need in order to turn into good humans, to make good grades at school, in elementary, middle, high school, and beyond? And you have so much on your plate already as a woman. And see that a lot of these men act like they don't even know how to help in the home. The first thing to hold, and they expect the woman to give them a list. Okay, fine, you give them a list, and you still have to go and explain the list, or the list goes not done or not done well. It's like weaponized incompetence. They will weaponize your womb. You have a bunch of kids, or you are stuck with them. Financially, you're weak because now you have these children. You can't just up and go, especially if you don't have good support around you, good community, consistent community to hold those kids for you. If you don't have money enough to pay for daycare and after school or before school care in order for you to work long hours. Do you see how this plays? So this is why it's so important, ladies. Make sure you are financially in a place, job-wise, career-wise, business-wise, whatever. Many of us were not taught this, that you can securely provide at least your basic needs, if not beyond, for you and the children. Know how many kids you can have. Go and get that birth control. Cut it off. You don't leave that to the man to decide. Those people, like those womb watchers are asking, oh, so when are you going to have the third child? When are you going to have a second child? Are you in my pocket? Are you the one who's going to pay for the children? When I come pay the school fees of the children, are you going to give me money for it? Are you going to give money for it? You know what I mean? So you have to safeguard yourself, safeguard the future of your children. Know that if you can make enough money to sustain yourself, then you're fine and ready to go into marriage. Sometimes we think we're going to marriage to have this man provide for us. And a lot of times it doesn't always turn out that way. it doesn't always turn out that way, and we are the ones left to hold the end of the.
Here's why I divorced my first husband. We met when I was 19 years old, and I didn't know this at the time, but I was currently suffering with PTSD from witnessing my mother have an asthma attack and die in her bedroom a few years before that. And I was also currently dating a sociopath who was extremely abusive. So I was broken. I was lost. I had no self-esteem. I was depressed. I was taking Prozac at the time. So here I am, 19. I meet him. We were working together. We worked together at Blockbuster. And he just thought I was the greatest thing in the world. I was a mess. But he thought I was fantastic. We ended up dating on and off for years. And I broke up with him 4 times before we got married. Brutally honest with him about my feelings. I talked about how I felt like it was more of a platonic relationship. He still married me. And immediately we began fighting about everything. We see the world from completely different perspectives. So when you're on a team with someone, and those people have completely different goals, your team sucks. We sucked at communicating. We really lost a lot of respect for each other. And there was still that, for me, that missing piece, that chemistry after years of unhappiness and accepting the fact that things were not going to change. Things weren't going to get better because you can't change a person. He is who he is. I am who I am, and it doesn't work. So I left. My daughter was about 1.5 years at the time. I share this story because everybody's journey, divorce journey, marriage journey is very different. But maybe there are pieces of my story that resonate with you or that validate some things that you've been feeling or thinking. Or maybe my bad choices just make you feel better about yours.
So I'm divorced, and people often ask me like when I knew, I needed to leave. And I often tell people that I shifted from being too scared to leave to being too scared to stay. People are often say like I was so brave to leave, and in a way part of me is like I almost feel like it was fear-based, but there were different types of fear. One, I was afraid of losing belonging with my husband, losing his validation that I was like, the person he loved and all this stuff. Then I went from being too scared to stay because I realized there was so much more potential in me that could not, in my opinion, have been realized within the constraints of the relationship. So when people say like I was courageous or brave, like, it's hard for me to take in because I'm like, I just, I was almost too scared to stay. But I guess fear, fear can be a reason, but I could have been like, it really could have been like that I moved from fear to courage, right? Yeah. So I was just thinking in my head about how, like, is fear kind of courage? Like, the too scared to stay is me saying, there's so much more out there. And unless I like leave this relationship, I won't be able to get it. So yeah, I feel like that's like the short answer to how I decided to leave. I realized at a certain point, a few months after I asked my ex-husband to leave, that I didn't feel compatible with him. I was finally I finally detached myself from the ways he did things, and I stopped accommodating and constantly adjusting myself to what he liked. And I just started like doing me, for lack of a better word. Like I just did me. And I realized when I did me, I had nothing to share with him. There was such a separation and detachment from my life with him. And I realized, okay, if this is what it means to be me, and I don't feel like any connection with this human being, then this is the direction I have to go toward myself. It was like away from the relationship, but really it was toward myself. So for anyone who might be struggling in a relationship, any type of relationship, could be romantic, it could be friendship, it could be family. I think this is like a really good indicator for knowing whether you need to make boundaries in the relationship, or maybe if you have and they just like aren't being respected in that way, and you have to make a decision for returning to yourself, which I think is super important.
Why did you separate? This comment was left on a video that I made about my marriage and then divorce. So the reason we separated was simple. We were very, very different people. The reason that it was hard was because we got married really young. I was 24 when we got married, and he was 28 years old. And that was the first time either of us had been in love with somebody before, and we both loved each other. Even at the end of the marriage, we loved each other. But we wanted different things at the end of the marriage. We wanted to live in different places. He was a very fixed person. He wanted to live in the place that he had grown up. He didn't really seek experiences outside of the ones that he knew. He stayed friends with everybody he had known from the time that he was in high school. And I'm much more of a growth-oriented person who wants to have different experiences and wants to live different places and wants to travel and wants to make something more of my life than I know. Because for me, it's about the exploration and the wandering and the journey and taking that and learning and then deciding what you want to do rather than coming to the table with this, like, this is the only thing that I want. This is the only way that I want to live. This is the place that I want to stay. So this wasn't that much of an issue when I was in my 20s and he was in his early 30s. But the older we got, his fixed mindset and my growth-oriented mindset made a lot of tension between us. And that caused conflict, and conflict is never good. And in addition to that, I was willing to give all of myself to the marriage, but my husband wasn't willing to do that. He didn't care and nurture the relationship or me in any kind of way. And I think even if he was sitting here on TikTok telling you the story, in hindsight, he would tell you that that was the case and that he didn't even try. So by the end of the marriage, I personally realized this person is never going to be able to reciprocate what I put into this marriage. And he is never going to meet my emotional needs. And it was once he had taken everything away from me and initiated our separation, and I was left by myself, and I had to make a decision of how does this continue moving forward, that I finally was kind of shaken awake, and that, like, it doesn't matter how much you love him, being forced to settle for this is not okay. You don't want to feel empty your whole life. You don't want to feel lonely in a marriage. And I felt so lonely in my marriage. And anybody who's been in a relationship in which they feel lonely in that relationship, they will tell you that there's no lonelier feeling than when you are in a relationship with someone and you still feel lonely. I would rather be single and feel lonely time to time instead of 100% feeling alone and unseen and emotionally distraught in a marriage where somebody is forcing me to feel alone.
My story is not unique. I left a marriage after 15 years. I had 3 kids with the man. I had built a life with him, and I really wanted it to work. Deciding when it was time to leave, deciding that I had tried hard enough, deciding that yes, it was worth to take the risk of the unknown for leaving the known, which I had become very accustomed to over the last 15 years. And even though I was miserable, there was some security to it. There was a little bit of, at least I was comfortable in knowing what to expect. As the years would roll by and every birthday I got the same card that said next year will be better, I somewhere deep inside thought to myself, there's no way. And the only way that my life is going to change is if I leave. But I had 3 kids. And I was also thinking, wait, if my happiness means that I'm taking away the kids' happiness, and all of the guilt that came into play of, am I being so selfish that I want to leave this? And is it bad enough? But here's the kicker. The kicker is that if you are in a place where you are absolutely miserable, you're being treated horribly, or whatever your circumstances are, but you know in your heart that the only way to change your life is to leave, let me tell you that you will carry guilt with you, that it will be extremely difficult. And when you are looking for people who you're like, okay, well, she left and look how her life turned out, and you're looking for examples and your mind is researching for the evidence that you're going to be okay, I'm going to tell you that no matter what it is, that's the unknown that's on the other side. If you are in a situation right now where years are passing by and you are still miserable in a relationship and you're not being taken care of and you're not being seen and you're not being heard and you're just being alone in a marriage, the unknown is terrifying, but there's nothing more terrifying than looking back and seeing all the years that you wasted living in fear.
Girl, let me tell you the tea. So people are asking how I left my husband of 10 years. How did I do it? Where did I come up with the strength? That's the question. Okay, so it wasn't like I woke up and decided to leave him. It was just years of unhappiness and drama. And we gave each other like this year, the end of this year, this current year, to see if we can work it out. But it just became so miserable and so hard. And it's not that I didn't love him. It was really hard to walk away. I literally, like, I pulled through as much as I can. But I think it was one day I literally like woke up after a day of crying or a night of crying, and I was just like, I literally can't do this anymore. And it was just like kind of like a tiff that we had. And just at that moment, I was like, I can't do this anymore. And obviously it was heartbreaking. Like going through any type of breakup or whatever separation is so heartbreaking. It wasn't an easy decision, but I cannot say this enough. Your body, your mind, your heart, your soul, God, everybody, like everything in you will know when it's time to leave. I just gave our relationship so much hope and so much effort at the end, even more. And I will even say it, like I begged, like I came out of character and I did, and it is what it is. But at the end of the day, I left and I am so much more happier. Obviously, like again, there's going to be a roller coaster of emotions. I'm going to have thoughts and feelings and things like that. But don't hold back. Don't second guess yourself. If you're asking like, is this relationship bettering me? And it's not, obviously do your best to fix it, because we're all here to be held accountable for our actions. But you know, sometimes you just gotta dip.
If you are considering leaving your partner, or you think that your partner is about to leave you, listen to the words I'm about to say. Also, if you received this from somebody, you need to bookmark, save, like, take notes on everything I'm about to tell you. I am 5 years post-divorce and I'm remarried. I have a very good relationship with my husband. We have a new daughter together. We're a blended family. I have read over 50-something books on marriage, divorce, attachment theory, all the things, have spent literally tens of thousands of dollars in therapy. And I wish somebody would have sent me a video like this before my divorce. Sarah's comment, I made this decision and regret it 100%. My ex was a great man. I just thought I'd be happier alone after 20 years of marriage, but I was miserable and my daughter was miserable. Biggest mistake ever. First of all, Sarah, thank you for your authentic transparency. It is refreshing, but also extremely sad. I'm sorry that you've gone through that. And here's what I want to say. No matter the path you take, whether it's staying in the relationship or going through the divorce, both situations take work. Staying in a relationship takes work to have a healthy marriage. And when you decide or whatever to pull the trigger on divorce, you're going to have an entire set of new things to work on going through your divorce. And then multiply that by 10 if you have children. So if you're watching this and you think your partner is about to leave you, or you're considering leaving your partner, you have to choose your hard, because both are hard. And relationships forever are going to take work. You might think that this relationship is too much work for you and then you move on to somebody else, but surprise, you're going to have to work in that relationship too. So if you haven't even been to therapy with your partner, if you've not picked up a self-help book or listened to podcasts, I'm telling you, before you make the jump to divorce, especially with children, start with that. Start with doing some work, because when you go through a divorce, it is an entire, like, it takes work to leave somebody. It's not just you sign some papers. When kids are involved, it's not you just sign some papers and you move on. You then have to figure out how to co-parent with somebody that you believe is your enemy. You have to figure out how to pay all of your bills by yourself and be a solo parent. You're going to have to find a new community of friends, because the old community that you were in no longer can relate to you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what people say before you divorce. I'm telling you, the dynamics change. You might have somebody who brings you to court every 6 months. We call them frequent filers. You're only going to see your kids half the time, most likely, which also means you're going to be sharing holidays. So you're going to spend some holidays probably alone without your children. You literally are going to miss out on half of your children's lives. Half. It is the most painful thing. There are no words. So I'm just saying, you have to choose your hard here. Both are extremely hard.
It's hard. Even in my new relationship with my husband, it takes work. He and I have gone to, marriage conferences and read so many books together, and we have set time aside every single morning to have coffee and connect with each other. We are constantly sending each other podcasts and books, and because he's gone through divorce, I've gone through divorce, we have agreed we are never going to go through that pain again. But we also, some of that pain that comes with divorce is watching your children suffer, and we don't ever want our kids to experience anything remotely close to that ever again. Now, I have to say, this does not apply to all situations. There are some situations with abuse and things like that where, yes, you need to leave. I am not talking to those situations. I'm talking to the people who they just don't get along, or they don't like their spouse or whatever, and they're like, man, I could probably be happier somewhere else. One of the comments that was on this video, he said something about how it was the best decision for him, but the worst decision for his kids. And man, I was like, yes, I resonate with that. Because I can find happiness and peace and joy and all of that, but the children, oh, it's devastating. So choose your hard. My recommendation, and take it or leave it, is to at least try the hard first before you break your family on purpose. Try going to counseling, try the books, try all of that, and send this to somebody if you're thinking about leaving your partner, because partner, what they're telling you is, let's do this hard before we have to do that hard.